The show Gotham had took a whole house of villains from Batman books, with each rogue being transformed in translation. Each adaptation being similar to the character from the comics that they're based on, but also still managing to be uniquely their own. Sometimes these changes would come off as needless, like adding an unnecessary extra layer to a character by giving them a split identity despite the fact that there are already plenty of other Batman villains with split identities and he does not need any more. The character's already rooted in duality. Or giving someone a never-before-heard-of secret twin, which was also something that seemed to happen on this show a lot, for some reason. Sometimes these changes might even hurt the depiction of the character, like turning the evil seductress Poison Ivy into a literal child in an adult's body. Just why? Why would you do that? Why did you do that? But at times, these changes could potentially improve a character, or at the very least, make for an interesting alternate to the original antagonist. And today's topic is one such case. Today we're talking about Gotham's Mad Hatter, and why I personally think he is the best version of this villain on screen. First and foremost, this isn't the same as a Joker or even a Two-Face portrayal. Mad Hatters are far and few between. He's not exactly an essential villain in the telling of Batman's tale, so he's not incorporated into every Batman project like so many other rogues are. Case in point, this is only the character's second ever live-action adaptation. Although technically speaking, it's actually kind of his first.
Let me explain.
As the first live-action Mad Hatter got his start back on the '66 Batman series. Except that Mad Hatter wasn't based on the Mad Hatter from the comics, but rather the Mad Hatter impersonator from the comics. Although I think at the time of them making that episode, that wasn't yet revealed. I don't know, I'm not as familiar with the golden age of Batman as somebody in my position probably should be. This means that this Mad Hatter may not have the same competition that a lot of other villains have. But regardless, this Madman makes an impression, giving a performance that feels in vein of the character from the comics, but still feels distinct. There are several key differences with this variant of the villain, though admittedly a lot of the differences are actually rooted in similarities, so there's a lot to compare and contrast. This Mad Hatter uses mass hypnosis on his enemies, turning them into his brainwashed drones, though his method of doing so has now been changed. No longer is he utilizing technology unique to him, instead this is a skill that he's honed, as this Mad Hatter is an experienced hypnotist. And I think the fact that this is being done through him, as opposed through means that he has, makes it that much more interesting. He now has a more intimate connection with his victims, able to poke and prod through their brain personally. It also makes him that much more threatening. He doesn't need a machine for his mind games. He's become his own weapon. Personally, I think I actually prefer this method for the Madman. It's also how the character makes a living, being a seemingly successful career choice. What's that like? With a lot of his Hatter mannerisms and the overall gimmickry being explained as being a part of his act. He's wild and weird, but that's just seen as being a part of the spectacle. Additionally, while the character has always had roots in the Lewis Carroll novel, what with being named after one of the side characters of the story and all, there is seemingly no connection between this Mad Hatter and the one from the book, at least not directly. There are plenty of references to Alice in Wonderland made on Gotham, but there's never any name drop or clarification that that's exactly what he's alluding to. There's a Mad Hatter, tea parties, a woman named Alice dressed up as the titular character that shares her name, and plenty of verbal tongue-in-cheek gags. But there is no mention about his love for that story, or reasoning behind why everything about him seems to be Wonderland adjacent. Interestingly enough, they did sort of set this up earlier on in Season 2, way before the character actually debuted. However, this doesn't actually lead to anything, as when Hatter does show up, he has next to no affiliation with Hugo Strange, with only Alice being experimented on by the Bad Doctor. Speaking of which, traditionally in the Mad Hatter story, he becomes obsessed with a girl named Alice, and does all that he can to win her heart despite constant protests. Utilizing hypnosis, he tricks the poor girl into being his brainwashed slave, professing his love to the object of his affection, and turning the object of his affection into an object. But in this Hatter's origin, Alice is actually his sister. And you may think that making the characters siblings would change their dynamic in this story beat, but you would be wrong. It is heavily implied that Hatter has an interest in his sister. And I mean interest as in something else that rhymes with the word interest. And yeah, that's a real creepy story. And because of that, it is perfect for the Mad Hatter. Considering the character has always had roots in unrequited love, and in a lot of continuities, the apple of his eye barely dropped from the tree, if you catch my drift, this felt like an exchange of creepy ideas. This is weird, mind you, but admittedly more of a watchable plot than, well, the alternative. Jervis's obsession with his sibling leads to her living her life in fear, hiding from him after she's made her escape from his care. Eventually, he manages to track her down, but their reunion is short-lived, as she dies trying to get away from him. Jervis, of course, doesn't acknowledge his wrongdoing in any way, shape, or form. He never takes any accountability for this. Instead, he decides that Jim Gordon and all of Gotham is to blame, spending the rest of his screen time trying to take revenge on the innocent, while masquerading around as the hero of a story in which he's the villain. Tetch rejects reality. As much like his victims, he too is wrapped up in his own warped mind, manipulating himself before he ever began manipulating others. The man is absolutely delusional. In terms of the character's depiction, he's every bit as charismatic as he is creepy. At times, he could almost come off as charming if he wasn't so downright bizarre. He's unsettling in just about every way imaginable, delivering sinister statements and threatening limericks in such a carefree tone, acting gleeful and giddy in the face of death and destruction. He is just so delightfully demented. He does downright despicable things, but he has such a fun time doing them. I really don't think that you could ask more from this actor. Benedict Samuel brought such an energy to this performance. You could tell that he was just really going for it in every scene that he was in. This portrayal isn't one I'd expect for this character, but it is one that works remarkably well. And for me, almost redefines the character itself. I think subconsciously, this is probably going to be the standard that I hold all future performances to. The Hatter here speaks mostly in rhyme. As a matter of fact, it's a gimmick that seems to increase with time. Like that, except, intentional. Unlike that. You see, at first, it starts with playful jabs. It's his little calling card to sign off on his crime sprees, the signature that he leaves behind, in the same vein as Riddler's riddles. But this changes. After Alice's death, Jervis begins to spiral, diving deeper into his own delusions, giving in to his own madness, and letting the lines blur between performance and the person playing it. His rhyme scheme increases, and by his final appearance on the show, he's almost exclusively speaking in verses. His Dr. Seuss schemes turn out to be his downfall, as when his adversaries play his games, and drop a bar themselves, he gives up far too much information in the form of a sonnet. The character's trademark doubles as his Achilles heel. There's something tragically poetic about that. Ironically, I also think the character succeeds aesthetically. The actor playing the part has a really out-there look that complements the character that he's playing. I mean, sure, yeah, it could ultimately be summed up as evil Johnny Depp from Wish, but you know what? It works, as does the wardrobe. I feel like he keeps all the important pieces of the character's closet. He's still in top hat, he's still wearing suits, he still uses the pocket watch. They keep all this character's identifiable pieces of clothing, but change up the style to make it more modern, and better fit in the world of Gotham. Which I kinda think is the whole thought process on this rendition of the Rogue to begin with. The same, but different. Out of all the villains introduced to the series, I honestly think this particular portrayal might just be closer to the top. Which is saying a lot considering that this show is filled with some of the as close to perfect as you could get performances. Mad Hatter managed to stand out in a gallery filled to the brim with much more iconic rogues. And it's all thanks to this insane interpretation of the bad guy and the actor who brought him to life. With that being said, that was Gotham's Mad Hatter. And if you liked this video and would maybe want to see a video on Gotham Zaz, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Mad as a Hatter.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bad time. Same bad channel.